over winter break. I was over at Sam's place, and then the plushie came, and we were all trying to figure out how to say prototype flux plush.
Yeah, it's a good tongue twister.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 516 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm the miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam, and I'm the artiste.
This is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today's April 11th, 2020 vibes. Before we get started, we have a warning. There's going to be a lot of positive profanity on this show. So be ready for that. We'd also like to thank our supporters over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. We've got recurring supporters who donate monthly to help keep the podcast going. So thank you so much for that. And we also got a donation with a message from Bam182. Who says, here's the rest of the money I owe you for Crashlands 2. For some reason, it was only $25 on Steam when I picked it up, and surely that can't be right.
Love it.
So
I saw somebody
Bam brought it up to 60.
Perfect.
So thanks
so much. Triple A prices.
Thank you so much.
I saw there was somebody in the Discord yesterday who got it on mobile for $9.99, and they were like, "What is this? $9.99? It should be $9,999."
Yeah,
it's like, yeah,
agreed.
Yep, should be.
Yeah. We don't make the rules.
Yeah. So this is the day after launch for we're recording this. When you're listening to it, it's 6 days after launch, probably, right?
Yeah. So we are just about 23 hours beyond the time we press the button.
So not quite one full day.
Yeah, and it's been a fascinating ride so far, folks. Buckle in.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we got some facts. Let's look. So
before we even get into the stats, I just want to also note that we don't have complete stats because our stats service got knocked over. It was already struggling end of day yesterday, and now it's basically inaccessible today. So
unfortunately, we have too many players.
Too many players.
And all that telemetry is exploding our server.
Yep.
We had to do some upgrades.
Yeah, so I don't know like total player count, stuff like that, but I'll just talk about a few of the highlights, a few of the high bits and bobs for us. So number one is, we talked last week and the weeks prior about how we set up for a launch properly to try and make sure that press know about it, platforms know about it, etc. And we do that thing we call a roll-up, which is, you try to get some attention from some press. You use that to get some attention, ideally from a platform. And the platform's doing anything for you is usually where the big actual return on that stuff is, right?
You got to do the Katamari ball.
Exactly.
You just keep rolling attention into more attention.
Yeah. So luckily with both the wishlist numbers that Crashlands had kind of out of the gate before launch, and then some of the press we'd gotten ahead of time, we'd already secured all the featuring stuff that we basically could on both the mobile storefronts and Steam. So basically the highlights there in terms of that little part of the equation was we got a Steam pop-up that went live shortly after launch yesterday that is just for Crashlands 1 players. Here's the thing. We knew about this. We've known about this for months. And so actually, I think almost a year. And so we have been part of the strategy we had with the original Crashlands the last year has been to put on these really steep discounts.
Just get as many Crashlands 1 players as we possibly can.
Exactly. Because we knew that Valve still, they still are a business. They got to make sure that they give those high attention economy spots to people who actually really sell the games. And so they were like, well, we'll give you one that goes to basically people who already own Crashlands. So we said, okay, strategy is to then make as many of those people as possible. So that's been popping off, going well.
And we put the link in original Crashlands on the main menu to tell people Crashlands 2 is coming. Go check that out too. So that actually funneled a large number of wish lists into Crashlands 2.
A large number of total wish lists over the last couple of years because we did that at the launch of the store page for Crashlands 2.
Yeah.
And when we originally did it, we didn't have it fully integrated. So we were just linking from in-game to the store page. So if a player clicked it, they'd kind of end up in the browser or whatever, right? And when we did it that way, we could tell through Steam's backend how much traffic that was sending. And it was sending something was half of all of the wish lists.
Most of our wish lists basically came from that. Yeah.
But after the first few months, we realized we could do a deeper integration so that people could just open the Steam overlay from original Crashlands and then wishlist Crashlands 2 from there. But we couldn't track that. So we're pretty sure that that's been the main source of all of our wish lists.
Right.
But we also can't tell. We have no idea actually where all have come from.
Yeah, and it's starting on around like the end of March. And I think I mentioned this episode. We had been included in a bunch of these April roundups. So it turns out that April's a bit of a banger month for games. I don't know.
Everybody had the same idea we did, which is a few months ago, every indie developer on Earth looked at April 10th and they were like, hey, nothing's launching that day.
Yeah, that looks like a good time.
So everybody behind the scenes, just like we did, made the decision of when to launch, started locking things in, got the ball rolling.
Releases out, let people know, public,
Yeah. And then once everything's locked in, then later we all started announcing our release dates and we all started announcing the same day. And
so it ended up being a much busier day than we anticipated. On top of that, the III initiative happened. So for those who aren't familiar, that's like it's a game showcase where there's no fluff in between stuff. It's just like back-to-back reveals of stuff or, new trailers, gameplay bits, whatever. And III is this sort of industry term for, it's like indies who they're still technically indie, but are approaching that like AAA scale or quality in some way, right? Where it's like, you just do a real good job, essentially, on that tier. And so, again, it's basically that showcase was yesterday, which means like on Steam, there's this huge bump down, right? Like on the front page of like this huge banner takeover that they have.
Yeah, pushing our game and every other game that released yesterday.
And I can't remember if we applied for that and didn't get in, or if we decided not to apply because they required like a brand new trailer or something like that.
We didn't apply for this one. I think last year, we might have applied, but then it was something like a bit too onerous on like the specifics given where we were and the proximity to the next fest because we were working on the demo at the time. So basically, like it turned out to be a much busier day than anticipated. So we're sweating a little bit about that, but around 11 o'clock, our whole team popped to the Discord to hang out and hit the button.
That's 11 Eastern.
Yeah, 11 Eastern, 10 Central, and basically went through, and it's this very funny thing launching a game where it's just not a climactic thing. And in fact, in many ways, there's like all these little breakers in there because they want to make sure, all the backends want to make sure you actually know that you're launching the game, right? So you'd be like, release app, you click it, everyone's like, yeah, and then it's like a little pop-up and it's like, are you sure though?
Yeah.
Type some stuff in this box to tell us that you're sure. So there's like,
if you're sure, type I'm super sure into this box.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also because these are made by engineers who have a very specific like UI UX goal, which is to make sure that you know that you like can launch the game, you are launching the game, and you can tell that you have launched the game, right? But it's not made by people who are like, also launching a game is a big deal, so let's put some fucking fanfare in here.
Yeah, there's no confetti,
nothing, because like it should be the case that if you hit that release button, confetti stuff should happen, right?
100%.
But the funniest one to me was Google Play, because it was the one where there was no confirmation. It was just like you just hit publish and it's published now. And
which was off-putting because we did the other two first, and they were like, oh,
it's just like
it's out.
but the way that it looks at the back end is there's just like a stack. There's like a list of like, oh, here's what's going to happen. You're like, here's what you're publishing. It's just this list of things, right? And then you finish publishing, and then the list is empty. But that's all that happened.
Right. It looks like sort of. I guess it looks like nothing happened.
It looks like nothing happened. Yeah, it was like it was somehow because there was no confirmation, and then a list just goes away. It was the least. It was the most instant and most anticlimactic of all of the experiences.
Yeah. So we do our little like everyone's cheering about stuff once we get all three of them done, and then Adam and Stampy disappear for about half an hour to go click another 1,000 buttons. Basically, this is all the other backend stuff. So this is like turning on that Steam pop-up, for example, is something that we get to do now. So you got to make sure you press that button, right? So there's like 1,000 things like that. And after the launch.
The big one was Steam bundles because Steam bundles can't have things in them until those things are live. And so we like had the bundles all ready to go, but then we had to like put the games into them, and then we had to make them go. And then we thought they would just appear on the store, but they don't. And so then we had to go through and be like, oh fuck, why aren't these appearing on the store? Mm-hmm. But everything's also, in the like the global caches for all these things. So we're like refreshing the page and like, is it just not here yet? Or have we not done something we need to do? And so there's this like game, this very intense game we're playing of like, fuck, did we do it? Oh no. Yes, we did do it. And it basically took like the first 15 minutes for us to be like, okay, yeah, we now know like what is live.
We knew that it was available on all platforms after about 15 minutes. Right? Yeah. We got confirmation. And then it was after about 45 minutes that like all of that other stuff, we had confirmation that was all working.
Yeah, all fully wrapped finally. Yep.
So and so then we just sit because it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll gotta see. So, on the back end for us, we have the thing that fell over, which is Kibana. This is like a analytics package that we put together that allows us to see all of the concurrent stuff from all platforms, right? Because there is no service that lets us just do that from Google Play, Steam, etc. So that's like our own thing. So we can see player count on that side, right? And then we actually use
that's player count. That includes pirates. It includes people from the platform.
Yeah.
It includes
sales,
just anybody who plays the game and hasn't turned off telemetry. It'll send a signal, right?
Correct. So then on the Steam side, we actually largely use SteamDB, which is just public, right? Because you can see the main thing we're looking at is peak concurrency, how many players are playing simultaneously right now, which is a really fun question. And then looking at how it's doing on the charts, because on the front of SteamDB, you see basically how games are performing in the various very large algorithmic charts that Steam puts together. So it's like popular new releases, trending releases, that sort of thing. Within like an hour or so, then we saw the game was in that basically in the top of all those categories. And on top of that, we got to see it show up all suddenly in the carousel, which is like that main big capsule in Steam, the one like the big landing page one that you see that usually offers like 4 or 5 games that you can rotate through.
And the other bit about that is if you're finding yourself in this position of trying to launch a game, right, is all of the stores are giving you personalized stuff everywhere, like on the store pages. And so the only way to have any sense of what's going on is to get the stores in incognito mode in your browser or something, so that you can act like or logged out or logged into a fully fresh account that's never done anything or whatever. So you can try to figure out like, am I the only one seeing this or is this?
Yes.
And even if you do see it and it's not just you because you're on a fresh account or whatever, you still don't know who else is. So there's such high uncertainty about like, how
what
good
exactly
is this
going on?
Yeah, what exactly
so that's where I think like the SteamDB concurrency count is kind of the place where we can, I guess, at least where we can park our understanding of if it's going good.
Are people playing the game?
Yeah. And so we saw that rise up in that first couple hours up to a peak of around like 2,200 or something like that, 2,300 concurrent users.
Yeah, something around there.
Which is great. That was already like 3 or 4x the original game's day one peak concurrency. So we were like, oh, cool. And then it started dipping down. We're like, all right, seems like maybe that's day one.
You got kind of the weekday afternoon slump, right? It's like it's a Thursday, it's 2 p.m.,
right.
And there's that combo too, because notably just right out of the gate. So we've always talked about how Crashlands is big in China. So right out of the gate, it was already the case that like 80% of our Steam users were coming from the Chinese market, which meant for them it was fucking it was midnight or 11 p.m. right when they started playing. So these are basically people who were like waiting for the game to come out when they're supposed to be asleep. And then playing it for a few hours and then finally having to go to sleep. And so then the slump comes in as it transitions over to like the US and that market starts to take over. So we had a pretty steep slump in the middle that then started to go up towards the end of the day.
And then so, what we're looking at there across all the services, we're basically just monitoring the background. We have all of our QA and engineering team is then paying attention to the Discord in particular to see what issues people are running into. Now that we know we have people, right? It's like, okay, there's got to be some problems probably. So what are they? And I got to say, just a good launch. Good launch, fellas, because the amount of bugs, shockingly tiny. I think there's only been like 2, and they're mostly like, they're not even bugs so much as they are like little edge cases in how a player might do a quest, essentially.
Yeah, I call it a bug in the sense that
it's an unintended and
broken. There's a blocker where basically like the game directs a player to a thing. It's like, do this thing. And if the player just wanders off and doesn't do that thing at that moment and goes off and does a bunch of other objectives first, then they get stuck and they get actually like hard blocked.
Yeah, so I'd say it's a design bug, right? It's not a programming bug.
Yeah, we just need to adjust that so that it doesn't matter whether the player runs off or not. So we'll be fixing that up today.
Yeah, so a little hotfix patch coming out.
And you did say there's a workaround that players can actually do, right?
All of them have.
Kind of. If they do enough stuff afterwards without doing the initial thing, then they will be permanently blocked, regardless. So we still got
our team's been
fix
fixing up,
but
been fixing up people's saves individually as needed and stuff like that. So, but it's been, I guess just on the whole though, the game is extremely stable. The number of these problems is tiny, and it's been really, really nice to see, right?
And I haven't really even seen any like complaints or feature requests or that kind of thing that we hadn't already expected to see.
Correct.
Yeah, we thought everything. I think the biggest one that I would say not too many people are hitting on, but basically asking questions about like, why is it that the right trigger is your button to use in interfaces?
This gets asked a lot.
So I do want to talk about it a little bit because this is kind of an interesting, it's an interesting psychological thing. So on paper, you would think about, there's like a distinction between using UIs, like pressing buttons and stuff like that, and playing the game. So in gameplay, the right trigger being your button that makes you do stuff, like it makes you swing your weapon or talk to characters or whatever. It feels right in gameplay. And the reason it's the right trigger and not the A button is because that keeps your thumb free to use the right joystick
and the hotbar. The whole hotbar. Because the whole hotbar, your combat hotbar is on it's basically on the shape buttons or letter buttons, right? On a controller.
Yeah.
A, B, X, Y, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So like having your index fingers be free for the triggers is super important for like quicker actions in combat and stuff. And so that's why like during gameplay, that's what that button is. Now, back in the day when we were doing some earlier testing, we actually did have it separate where the A button was how you did stuff in interfaces and the trigger was how you did stuff in gameplay. However, there's not actually that clear of a line between UIs and gameplay. Because, for example, if you are in dialogue for a quest, that's a UI. Like people are talking. So you would like press A to advance through the dialogue. Mm-hmm. Or if, you have one of those like you go to a teleporter. You click on the teleporter, there's a scrolling list of things. Well, now you're in a UI, right? So you like – there's lots of like, I guess you'd call it maybe like micro UIs that kind of pop up throughout gameplay. Mm-hmm. What we found was that early on, if people like initially in the game, they would have some dialogue, they'd have a couple of these moments where they'd be pressing A to navigate those UIs. And then when they went back to playing the game, they couldn't figure out how to do stuff. Yeah. Because even though we would tell them use the right trigger, their brain was like locked on the A button as being the do stuff button.
Yeah. Well, and the root of all of this is that, right? It's not even about like the root of all of it is the choice that we made to put do stuff on right trigger instead of A. Because for everybody, like any game you play, the default is you press A to do stuff, right? Whatever the default stuff is in the game. And like I said, there's a good reason for that from making the game play as effectively as possible, right? But now we have this like conflict between user expectation and what actually makes for the best controller experience, right? And so almost every player who starts with a controller is going to be like, the fuck is this, right? And be a little mad about it until they get used to it.
But not because it's bad, just because it's unfamiliar.
It's unexpected, right? It's unexpected. Yeah. And so, but that means that they have to put in the time to get used to it instead of like just fight it, right? And not all players can successfully kind of manage that.
And we don't. There's a few kind of in the weeds reasons that I won't get into as to like why we don't allow rebinding keys on UIs. But the big reason comes down to there's like 120 something keybinds, many of which are hidden for UIs, and they have to be cross-checked against each other and they can't overlap and stuff like that. And so so it like that's kind of the biggest kind of like point of contention. People are just like, why is this like this?
Yeah, can we not?
Yeah. Yep. And I definitely 100% agree that like, in UIs, it feels like the A button should work. But like whenever we tried that, it actually made the whole game way more confusing. Yeah. Because now it's not consistent.
Yeah, it would need to just be a full swap where it's just whatever A used to do is now what right trigger does and vice versa, right? Rather than being like UI specific, right? Yeah.
And then you do a thing where you basically, because the alternative there is to basically move one of the hotbar slots, the combat hotbar slots onto one of those triggers or something like that, right? So you'd have 3 of them and then A.
Exactly, yeah.
But then the other one's like somewhere else, which
is fine because your fingers are there.
It works. It's like time, it felt weirder to me than just having them all there, just like the D-pad. So,
but it would work just fine, So is it not possible for somebody to do that rebind? Is that
you can't rebind it fully across everything because it's not just like a swap RT everywhere for A. That's just not how that's going to work, right? So we could. There's some options that we could do.
I think that to me that would be the thing to do. Is like, it's a little janky, right? And the thing is, like, there's no such thing as a non-janky control scheme on
controller.
Well, not even controller, just on anything, right? Because jank is basically that combination of what you expect versus what your hardware is and looks like, versus what the.
I do think that the plus though is that like over time you see the comments fade off, right?
Yeah,
which is like
that's what you get used to.
Yeah, as you get used to it, actually, it works really well.
Yep.
So even the player complaints have been low. The reviews have been stellar. So we got like a 95% like right now. It's like there's a lot of reviews and they're very, very good. So that's excellent. And keeping us on those top of the charts. So basically where we're at then at the end of yesterday. So just the just roughly midnight. So not even actually 24 hours of sales and stuff. But what we account kind of our end is like day one, because that's essentially that's how all the stores count it, right? Is by this certain cutoff point at night. And
so that's 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, it's like, I think it'd be 2 a.m. or something like that. The data we've seen so far looks really, really good, where on Steam, the game is outperforming the original game by about 5x on sales and like revenue, right? And then on top of that, peak concurrency then yesterday was even at that earlier time, around like 2200 or 2300 or something like that, was already like 50% higher than the original games they were, or a couple times higher, than the original games they won. And then currently it's over like 8,000 right now. Now. So that's amazing. And then
China is just like eating this game up.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome.
It was fun to watch it. Like last night, we're like looking at the dashboards. We're like, we could see, because we have it broken down by language, that like the language on the device that the person has picked. So we could see just like ZHCN is the abbreviation for simplified Chinese, and all of a sudden we just start to see it start to come back up again. Like,
I see them waking up
as they're waking up, and then it just fucking exploded overnight. Yeah, and again, knocked over our analytics. So now we don't know what's going on.
Now we don't know anything.
Yep. And then on the mobile side is slower to report, right? So Steam, like I said, with SteamDB and all that, we can kind of see more, not quite minute to minute, but close to it. So on the mobile side, we can see that the Android version, I think from yesterday, there's also like, there's some back compute where it's like, they don't have, it's not complete sales data. It's like partial, right? It kind of backfills based on some stuff. So we know at least that on the Android side, it looks like it's about 30% higher than the original game, which is great. iOS side is lower, but the featuring hasn't kicked in versus the original game's featuring was
on launch day. Right?
Yep. So that's kind of
iOS is. I mean, all the platforms are very feature sensitive. It's like people don't buy what they don't see, you know. Yeah. But iOS in particular is, because I think it has quite a bit less algorithmic exposure of things than the other two stores do. So yeah, we got to kind of wait for that feature to kick in and then see what happens.
We have gotten all the requests from Apple for those. So in theory, by the time certainly by the time podcast goes out, that should have happened or should be happening. And then with how well it did, I just sent a note off to our Steam person, and I was like, "Can we have just like a big pop up for everybody? I feel like we earned it. Come on, money, please." So we'll see. We'll see if they give that to us. But all in all, it's been very successful done across both on the technical side, the bug side, player response side, and then it looks like on like the kind of units moved and the revenue side too. We don't know where it's going because again, we're still a ways away from 24 hours in. And so I think part of it, I don't know how you guys have been feeling, but it's like when I went to bed yesterday, the peak concurrency was still whatever it was kind of earlier that day, 2300 or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is good. It's like a good launch, it's chunky, but like, it's not like blowing anything out of the water. It's not insane, but it's good. And I was like, I guess I could park it here. Like,
decent.
Decent, it's good.
Decent launch. Yeah.
It's doing what it needs to do.
And I talked to Sampy and she was like, I'm hoping for 4,000 concurrent players. And I was like, that'd be pretty, that'd be a jump.
That'd be a big jump.
Pretty good. That's what I was like. Then we wake up and it's 8,000. We're like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh. All right. So, we don't know where exactly it's going to fully peak out. But every time it peaks again, I think you kind of park your expectations.
Yeah, you're like, is that it? Are we done? Is it over?
I think mostly it's like, I think you kind of park it in a way. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's like, you don't want to you don't want to think it's going up way higher and then not have that happen. You know what I mean? Internally,
Yeah.
so I'm always like,
Anytime I look at the number, I'm assuming that it's done and it's going to start going down.
Well, and that's the
Because
thing
like
about-
we've been in the past, we've done that where it's like, oh, you look at it start to creep up and you're like, yo, man, just map that trend line. We'll have like 300 million players within the next, you know, and then of course at some point it just stops.
But that's the thing about all this kind of stuff is like, you know, if you can't project what's going to happen, there's certain like things you can, like the fact that we can see China waking up. Like, and we could, if you look at the analytics of like how many people are playing the game right now is basically what we're looking at, right? And you can see it's smooth. It's a smooth curve, right? So if you see it start to go up, you're like, oh, cool, it's gonna go up. But that doesn't give you any sense at all. Is it gonna go up 5x back to where it was, half to where it got to, right? It gives you no sense. It gives us, you get an idea of like directionality that you can kind of predict, but no idea of extent. And launch is dominated by all of these like sudden enormous things, like a feature or somebody huge discovers the game and starts to talk about it or whatever, right? And so the launch window of like basically the first weekend in particular, but really the first whole week even, is this collection of like random giant things that may or may not happen, each one of which can like dramatically impact the trajectory of the thing. And so it's just, you cannot predict. So basically like during that launch window, you can start to figure out like, was the launch good, right? As in like, did it generate enough revenue that we know we've got some more runway time, like that kind of stuff, right? Do we have a lot of players? Are they happy? Like all that kind of stuff. But even if like a whole week of that doesn't really give you a good sense of like, what does the rest of the month look like? What does the rest of the year look like, right? And so all we're doing is like everything we can to have that launch spike itself, like the launch weekend, be just as big as possible, try to like pull all the triggers, you know, get everything to happen during this time. Because that's what makes it the most likely that the pattern is really good and everything happens in a huge way very early on.
I will say, as far as the only like holes that we've seen so far, they're kind of what we expected, but it's still annoying, which is like, it's still been very hard to get like very large YouTuber or Twitch coverage. So we had Wanderbots did a great video like on like Wednesday or Thursday of last week before the game came out. But there's some of these like nothing on like launch that's been
I think it's just that somehow or another Blueprints sucked all the oxygen out of the room on the Twitch side, on YouTube, on press. It's funny because like we didn't know about that game coming up, and then as we were kind of like this week looking, because like there were so many games we didn't know about most of them coming out on the same day as ours. So we started looking at all the press stuff, and it's just like all the press and the critics and stuff who we sent keys for Crashlands 2, they're all writing about Blueprints. There's just tons and tons of articles about it.
Also, if you don't know that game, it's blue, the color, followed by Prince, like the royalty. But you know, it is a pun though. It's a pun about Blueprints, but yeah, that's the game.
Because it's like an architecture kind of themed, like
puzzle game,
puzzle roguelike kind of like genre blending thingy. That it looks very cool, and I definitely understand why.
Clever, yeah,
I definitely understand. Like it's visually very interesting, and it's kind of like a cool bend on various like mechanics and stuff. So I can definitely see why, you know, it got quite a bit of attention, especially on the indie side of things. It's like when we go to Twitch, you know, they've got like 30,000 people watching on Twitch, you know, and stuff like that. I will say though, and also they got like lots of big Steam featuring and stuff that like we were saying, we only got featuring pushed toward Crashlands players, but still, despite all that, we surpassed them on peak concurrent players. So
I think it's important that you have a launch nemesis, you know, which does, again, we got nothing against them at all.
It's just they launched the same day as us, so they're our nemesis now.
So they're our friendly indie nemesis, right?
Maybe a rival. Maybe a rival is a better term.
Yeah, you know? Like we're not their rival. You know, they aren't thinking about us at all. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're thinking about them. You know?
So the whole time we've been going, we're like, oh, can we catch up to Blueprints? You know, like that's our goal, and can we surpass them? And so being able to do that where there's like a game we know everybody's talking about, even when they're not talking about Crashlands 2, right? To be able to overtake it is very satisfying from a like, oh hell yeah,
even if it's just in some charts, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but importantly, so like as we were looking at, we were trying to predict what would happen because we look at that game, we're like, okay, so they got all this coverage, they got all this featuring and stuff, but we have like two things that they don't have, which is like we're a different genre, right? Which means that potentially people can put more time into our game than they can into Blueprints because it's more puzzle themed, right? So we're like, okay, so maybe our concurrent players will kind of like surpass theirs at some point,
Right.
you know, if we have people sticking around longer. But the second thing is we're in Chinese and they're not. So as we're looking at the graphs and we're like, okay, as China starts waking up, as far as playing Crashlands 2, Blueprints is only in English. So as the English audience in the US, you know, goes to bed, then that's our time to strike, right? It's that's when our graph starts going up. And so then we like, that's what we were kind of like thinking might happen. And then as we went to bed and woke up, like, yep, that's what happened.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
So
it's really fun.
Pretty cool.
And then as far as like critical reviews, we've gotten a nice handful of them. But you know, part of the thing we look at is also just hitting that. You have to get like 4 scored reviews from Metacritic to turn on.
Yep.
And actually, a lot of publications like kind of moved away from scores in the last 5 years, and so we got like.
I mean, I think it's one of those like nobody likes.
It makes
nobody
sense.
likes it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of them moved to just like either like it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, right? Or some other standards, much more.
Well, we got
chunky.
that Vice article we got, which was.
Well, so I wanted to mention. So we've on Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday, so day before lunch. You know, we're all nervous because we still haven't heard anything yet. Just kind of waiting.
And we had one embargo break as well.
That's true.
Yes, to very brief before our PR team got them taken down. So, so we don't know what's going to happen still. Just sort of waiting, and this Vice article came through, and oh man, like I don't think I've gotten a more glowing review. I don't know if I've seen a more glowing review. It was so good, and they so clearly got what we were trying to do too. And so, you know, I read that thing. I'm about like start crying a little bit because I was like, oh thank God, just the relief of being
at least to this person, we delivered everything that we were trying to do.
Yes.
Thought we did.
Yeah. And then so that was like a little bit of psychic relief on like Wednesday, and then
but again, like that was an unscored review, so it won't show up on Metacritic.
Because the review was highly recommend, right?
Yeah.
But not with a score attached, which means it can't show up in like an aggregate Metacritic.
Yeah.
Yup. So I said all in all, nicely outperforming the original. We're waiting to see kind of what happens on mobile with some extra featuring over the next couple of days, and then hopefully trying to get some of that bonus kind of editorial stuff on the Steam side if we can. If they're even doing that right now, I don't know if they'll let us, but you know, we'll see if we can do that. And otherwise, the players have been loving it. Bugs almost completely free. So if you haven't hopped in yet, it's a very good time. The Discord is popping off. It's very fun to watch. The community is solving its own problems now, you know what I mean? Which is so fun.
Yesterday we were all up into this business being like making sure that, because we also need to know, like, is there something wrong or is somebody just trying to figure it out? Right. And so making sure that we're keeping everything on track, identifying that kind of stuff meant we were just like absolutely everywhere. But overnight, because I was thinking like we can't do it overnight. So like this morning I got up and I was trying to catch back up and I was like, oh, I can't. It's too much now. Nope. I can't.
But that's fine. It's like it's all running. It's on its own now. Yeah. Like people are helping each other and giving each other pointers.
Seeing that, because I was like, as long as I saw, I was like, oh yeah, people are answering each other's questions and stuff. So I was like, cool. It's fine that I can't catch up now. It's fine that it's out of our hands.
Yeah, and the Discord community has also been great because we did put out a call for basically early reviews. We're like, if you're enjoying it, even in the first hour or so, can you just like go give it a good review, whatever platform you're on, because it actually helps a ton, especially in the early hours and days of
first
launch.
24 hours.
To get both the review count up and then also just if that's good, it helps you kind of pop into some other thresholds on stuff like Steam or the mobile stores. And so they did, they helped us out in that regard. So if you're listening on, I guess, the following Wednesdays on for what will that be? Just whenever you listen to this, if you haven't reviewed the game yet and you have played it, definitely go do that. It's still important to us to help kind of keep boosting the game up to get more people to see it and keep this launch going. So
it is funny too, right? Because there was a third thing that stuff that's listening to things that Blueprints didn't have coming to launch, And there's a third thing, which is a community of people who already have like the original, like is that there wasn't a sequel, right?
It's not a sequel, yeah.
That's true. We were like, unleash the nerds.
Yeah, and also we have a really close relationship to our community, right? Which Blueprints is coming from a bigger team with a big publisher. Like it's a different environment, different vibe, right? And so the other thing is we have our current community has delivered. They've been great, and they've left a lot of reviews.
Showing up.
And but the funny thing about that is that somebody from fully outside who isn't part of what we're doing over here, if they want to be a conspiracy theorist, if they have that bent, they're looking at our reviews and they're like, oh, all these people only played for less than 2 hours. Like, is this is this a scam? You know, like because
Yeah. And then they go to Twitch and they're like, this game doesn't have that many Twitch streamers.
nobody's
compared to the
playing
other games I watched.
yeah, but of course
how
it's
come it
that-
has so many users and reviews and stuff?
Yeah, it was that two-parter, which is most of our players are in China, and they're not Chinese players aren't using Twitch.
Yeah, they stream on Chinese
Oh,
platforms.
yeah.
It's invisible to this broader community, and of course, it's because we're doing this big pushes and encouraging our people to just leave reviews earlier, right?
Yeah.
And
It is talk to them, you know.
Yeah, 'cause we
which
can
you
just
can't
talk to
normally do. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's gone very well. And we're still, I think, in many ways, kind of holding our breath to see what happens over the next couple of days and over kind of into next week. But once the dust settles here in a couple of days, then we should be able to start making some plans for what the heck we're actually going to do about all this. And then we'll communicate those. We'll keep that going. You know, I do want to say, so this podcast will be coming out on basically the day or day before we talk about the plushies. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it because we got plushies.
Yeah. Early plushie announcement. Plushies.
They're coming.
We got them.
Just keep your eye on the Discord and or you can go to Make Ship.
Yeah, we should probably make it live that day so we can put a link in the.
It'll be live already, I think. There's like a coming soon page or something.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, because if it's live, then we'll have a link in the show notes so you can get to it that way.
Yeah, so we do have a Flux and Juice Box plushie, which if you try to say,
it's like it's combined.
yeah, you go check it out at the link in the show notes, or if you go to Make Ship, that's MAKESHIP.com. They're the team that we partnered with. They've been great, super cool thing, and basically it's almost like a Kickstarter. So they basically say like, if 200 people buy plushies, then they make them.
Then we make them. Yeah.
And they'll ship them anywhere.
They ship them anywhere. So presumably with the tariffs, it's going to get a little weird.
Oh shit! Right.
And probably annoying.
thing.
Well, it's only weird if they're not in the U.S. and are shipping into the U.S. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So again,
other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, and they were great to work with, and we did like a few kind of design iterations on it with them. Turned out really great. Like I went sitting on my shelf. That's awesome. So
I think it was over over winter break. I was over at Sam's place, and then the plushie came, and we were all trying to figure out how to say prototype flux plush.
yeah, it's a good
Prototype Flux plush.
You're like, yeah, hand me that prototype flux plush, and it takes some practice.
It does.
But the fully released ones will not be prototypes, so people don't have to learn how to say that.
Exactly.
They can just
Come
have
to a certain
flux
mood.
plush,
Flux
plush, which is also a little bit hard to say. But
Flux plush.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, it's been great. We're still chilling above that 95% positive review score on Steam, which I was actually expecting the game to be more like in the 80s. The reason mostly being just like it's a big game with lots of different ways that people can approach things and different like paths people can take, and depending on how you engage with it, you're gonna have a very different experience, right? So
or even the playset, like the combat set you decide that you kind of fall into, if it doesn't fit how you play or whatever. Yeah.
And I figured like there would be that subset of players who preferred the controls in the first game and are now like, meh, and then they give it a thumbs down. There's so many
we're seeing that
things, right?
We're not seeing that on Steam, which to me makes sense, but we are seeing that on mobile. There's a lot of
People who
chatter
wish it
of
was
players
a
who
one-touch.
wanted that without one touch mode.
Yeah. And so it's like, basically it's weird because like the bigger a game is, the more reasons you expose for somebody to decide that they don't like it, right? If it's a very one-dimensional game that like, if it's just got one thing going on and when you look at the trailer, you see that one thing and then you play it and you're like, that's the thing, then you don't have too many things you can form an opinion about. It's just like that one thing, right? So I was kind of assuming that it would be suppressed a bit, but it actually seems like on Steam anyway, like the majority of the negative reviews are people who are upset that we use gender neutral pronouns, which I'm like, this person wasn't going to be happy kind of in general. So like they were going to leave a negative review anyway.
We talked this on previous podcast. It's just like, just give it up. We're talking about aliens, folks. We're talking about aliens, man. I don't know. Now that's on you. You're the one
grow up.
Yeah.
God.
So I mean,
if that's what's putting a dent in our reviews, bringing us down to 95%, that's fine. That is completely fine. So it's going super good. You guys want to hit a question?
Yeah.
So these questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. The highest upvoted question comes from NargatruckeeDippatub.
Nice.
Who says, hey there, you've mentioned several times that you participated in many game jams back in the day. During this time, did you notice that you were particularly adept or particularly inept at making games in a particular genre? And did this influence the sort of fully fledged games you've been developing since? I mean adept in the sense that the final result was typically more fun or it was just easier for you to make.
Before we even get into it, I would say this is an interesting framing, right? Of did we notice that we were particularly good or bad at like doing a particular genre, right? And because I'm just thinking back, and I don't think the direction that we've always had is, oh, this genre is particularly hard or not hard, unrelated to our ability to do it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, certain game shapes are better or worse fitting for especially a jam context. Yeah. Right. I think in a longer development cycle, you can ask a question like, how does it fit like your team? Basically, you get to that skill question. How well can you pull it off? Right. But in a jam context, there's not enough time to do most things. And so what you typically see is stuff that has more of the arcadey, physicsy, slapstick to it. You could do some like kind of light sim or roguelike stuff. But anything beyond that, like it's really hard to build like an RTS, you know what I mean? In that short of a window. Yeah. So it's more so I think we've seen that kind of genre interaction between what we're able to do effectively.
Yeah. And even in a jam context, I would still think about it just as team shape, because if you do a jam and you've got 5 artists and 1 programmer, then that just changes the shape of the game shapes have to match, which is stuff that has a lot of art assets, but not a lot of like programmatic complexity,
right?
Or vice versa, right? And so I think it's less a matter of like ability or inability as it is just matching the details, right?
Yes.
And the genre kind of provides some broad constraints or a broad range of constraints of like what is at all even an option in the first place. But it's very broad, like extremely broad, actually, because really it all comes down to the details. You could make a 4X game with like 2 people and like no assets over a weekend under a certain definition of a 4X game.
Right.
Like you could absolutely do it. So it's trying to match constraints with what your team shape is.
Yeah, I do think one of the interesting things in terms of like something that the thing that game jams I think don't allow you to do, which is something we've kind of I guess learned about and more or less like tried to move to overcome is I see game jams rely almost entirely on like at least the way we approach them on like the luck or the lottery approach to like stumbling onto a good game, right? Because it's like you're only gonna spend a couple days on it, but there's not like a lot of not a lot of higher level like aesthetic or theming questions that you're bothering to answer to
you
say
don't have
like
time
how
for
to
iteration and feedback, right?
Yeah, on like that high level thing before you go, right? You kind of just need to go.
You pick a thing and just start making it.
Yeah. And so there's not that there's no pre-production time to be like, okay, we want to make a game that looks, that like plays roughly like this, but what thematically or what overall, even like kind of marketing positioning aspect of it can we be clever about, but to both help the guide to the design downstream and to guide like its appeal, right? When it comes to time for players to actually enjoy it. I think that's something we've gotten better at because of the bigger games, especially with Crashlands, but like it's something we're more conscious of at least now. But you still really have.
I will say, I don't think there's ever been a jam game that we made where I was just like, this is not fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But those are different things, right? That's going to
because it's a question of we've talked a lot in the past about how the fun of a game comes down to the balance.
Yeah. You can really make anything fun.
Right. You can kind of make we made a game where you play as an elevator.
Yeah. It only has to be fun for minutes, right? That's the other part Yeah. You can make anything fun for 10 minutes.
Yeah. And honestly, like even in a jam, you can make it fun for 10 hours if you add some upgrade loops, basically, if you kind of like roguelite it. And so that's often been our approach in jams is like not even find a mechanic, just come up with a concept and then balance it until the mechanic is fun and then
strap some upgrades on it,
strap some loops into it. And like that approach works super well in that context. When it comes to a bigger game context, I think the principles are still there, but you also have questions about scope and marketing.
Exactly.
Right?
I think it's like a game jam is basically pure in a sense, like the way you decide if you did a good job is the game good, but that is not.
Does it feel good to play?
Yeah. That's just like not a sufficient question for actually like a commercial thing.
Because also your market, you have a captured market at a game jam, right? Which is everybody else in the game jam.
Yeah,
wants to see and play everybody else's games in the game.
They
jam.
at least have to look at it.
Yeah, they have to look at it, and also literally nobody outside the game jam is going to look at it, right? Any game jam game, and so you have you don't have to worry about that part. I mean, you want them to have a good time when they look at it, right? But you're not when you're making a commercial game. The main goal is to get people to buy it and then be happy that they did, right?
Yes.
And those two elements.
It's almost like I guess if I think about like if you think about game jams on the very bottomest level, and then like these giant AAA productions, especially the comical ones that we've seen failing a bunch over the last year or two, they feel like they have like the opposite thing as the priority, right? Which is like in the game jam sense, like all you care about is can I produce a game that's fun over this like very short tiny window, right?
Honestly, it feels like the market is actually like the market of players is also shifting that way. Where like because so many games are coming out that are incredibly polished because of Unreal Engine and Unity and stuff like that. Where games that have great lighting and bloom and motion blur and beautiful 3D models and stuff,
like great appeal.
People I think have gotten really burned on like paying full price for games that look great but they just aren't that fun. Mm-hmm. Then you see games like Vampire Survivors suddenly pop off.
Yeah,
and people are like, I will drop $3, $5, $7 on a game that looks like somebody just vomited a trillion pixels out in random order. As long as it's fun, you know.
Like there's definitely growing small market, like a growing like sub $10 game market.
I think there's a growing movement where people are just becoming less convinced by the visuals of a game.
Yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
Like even that Schedule 1 game, it looks so fucking goofy, and the character models are hilarious. It's got a specific style. Yeah. It's actually not an ugly game.
No, it's very appealing.
It's goofy is the right word.
It's goofy looking. Yeah.
It's like a lower quality looking game at first glance in terms of like, just like the level of polish and stuff like that. But if you watch the trailer, you're just like, this looks fun.
Yeah. Well, it's got a lot of
it knows what it is. It's a drug dealer game.
Yeah.
It looks goofy as shit, but I looked yesterday, it had like 100-something thousand concurrent users. Like,
Yep.
It's going nuts.
What I think is exactly is it used to be that the way that you sell a PC and console game is graphics. That was like right. But I think it is today. It's personality. It's what are the vibes of what I like? Look at
does
the
it look like a person made this? Who cared?
It doesn't look like a good. Does it look like it's got an opinion of some kind?
Yeah, it does look like its own thing. And I think that's the thing. Like it's you could sort of like not do that at all in a game jam, which is kind of what I'm getting at. Which is like. Game jams, I think, prepare you really well for those like in the weeds design discussions, for making anything fun. I think they do not actually prepare you for the other half of the equation.
A commercial game.
Yep. Yeah, which is like really designing a game that has appeal on like a whole bunch of different layers, or like necessarily developing a unique identity on a visual level for a game is very hard, and it takes longer typically than a fucking whole game jam lasts, right?
Yeah. So on the one hand, like it's true that you don't have to, right? But if you look at our games, they all have our very distinct vibe,
the same feel.
Yeah. So you can, as you like learn how to do that, and if you try to do that, I think that's the thing about a game jam is because all these things you don't have to do to still succeed at a game jam, right? Then unless you intentionally decide to do those things, they don't let you hone those skills, right? But it is still the case that like when we've shown our games in the past at game jams, like the audience is laughing, they're into it, right? Because we're personality first, right? We're not really like we talk about being like mechanics first and good at bad, like, but really we make personality first games so that when people start engaging with them, they're just like it's just silly, goofy, funny shit, right? And
this game wants me to have a good time.
Exactly, yeah. It's like we did the so Seth and I we didn't do the global game jam, but we went to the St. Louis chapter to like say hi to everybody and then to go see the final results, and you can see it there too, right? When people are up sharing their games. The ones that got the most crowd reaction that people wanted to go play on their own devices there, right, were the ones that just had fuckloads of personality. It had nothing to do with what the game itself was. Yeah, like there's this great one that I like. It's still sticking in my head.
You still remember how clever it was, which I might have mentioned it before, but somebody made a game where it was like a platformer where you play as a cat, and there's all these people walking around having conversations with each other, and you can use their speech bubbles as platforms. But of course, like when they stop talking, their speech bubble goes away. And so one of the mechanics of the game at some point is like you have to like knock a vase off of a shelf onto someone's head so that they yell. So they're like, ouch. And then you can jump on the ouch and then use that to get to the next section.
Just like so like, charming. And there wasn't, they barely had like a single level because it's a hard level design thing. You know,
it's basically a puzzle platformer.
Yeah, but it's a puzzle platformer with a cool hook, a very fun idea, and just so much personality. That just the whole audience fucking loved it. And one of the ones that was my favorite was the 3 bubble problem, which is just already because the theme was bubble for the event, right? And so already just fucking stellar name. And also the woman who did it just like did a very impressive, like it was a full ass game with like 10 levels and stuff, right? But they were all simple puzzle levels, right?
Yeah, this was one person. And I think the cat one was like just a couple of people. So it's actually like as you get more people onto a team, everybody's got an opinion, and then the personality of the game kind of falls through the cracks because nobody gets to just like let their own ideas kind of like take over and shine through.
Nobody gets to send it, you know.
There's it's a committee. It's designed by committee. You know, everybody's got an opinion about what should or shouldn't be there, and you end up with like more of a gray kind of forgettable kind of experience. You know. So I mean, it's so I guess to kind of like loop back around to the core of the question of like, are there games and genres, like other genres that we struggle with, or other genres we're particularly good at? I think in a jam context, there's certain genres that work well. Outside of a jam context, I don't think we really come across something that we wouldn't be able to deliver on.
I think the struggle we would have is having fun making it, right? So
I don't think so. Just because like at least for me, making stuff like Crashlands, like I wasn't really into this kind of a game. Mm-hmm. And so I had some opinions about why that was the case. And so then I could put those into the game to say like, I don't want our game to have the stuff in it that makes me not like this type of game, you know? Right. So like you can make it fun for yourself, just based on like the kinds of opinions that you have and that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, which is true because you shouldn't actually be making a game in a genre first way. Like you shouldn't sit down and be like, I'm going to make a 4X game, right?
Well, you kind of need to.
I mean like, what I'm saying is like you're making a game that satisfies a bunch of goals, right? And genre is a vague ass reflection of subsets of those goals that kind of overlap and stuff.
It's like you can fall in the trap of treating it like a collection of check boxes.
Yeah.
These are the mechanics that make this type of game.
Yeah. So you can say like
another, you know.
Yeah. So you can say something like, oh, let's make a roguelike, and that's fine because that barely means anything, right? But it conveys a certain set of goals without having to list them already, right? So that you already kind of, it's like, you're just like, oh, we're gonna make a roguelike. There's a good reason for that in a jam context. It means high reusability of assets. It means it's probably kind of actiony focused, good in a game jam context because it can be really engaging and fun, low barrier to entry, all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It carries with it all these things, but roguelike isn't the part that matters there, right? It's all of those specific elements that you're thinking of when you think of roguelike that you actually care about. And so when you're pushing these things, so that's what I'm going to say. It's like not about genre. It's about what is your intention for this thing you're making, what it's supposed to accomplish when you've made it, who do you have around to make it, and you start designing a game from there, borrowing from all the specific games and like their cool mechanics and stuff that you like, right, to create something new that will then happen to be kind of like right in a.
I guess genres. In a way, you can't escape the fact that you or your team are the ones who are making whatever the thing is. Yeah. And it will be, that fact will be.
It's going to be a reflection of that in the game somehow.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And you shouldn't, and you don't want to escape it either, right? Because
you don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what makes the game good.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see what happens next in terms of what we make. I mean, I will say we are, quote, bad at making multiplayer games, mostly because we don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're bad at it by definition. Because
we can't yet, or we haven't.
Right. If we really and part of it too is like we know that in the back of our minds, we know that multiplayer games are fragile and require a lot of maintenance.
They're
right?
riskier than
they're super risky. They require a lot more customer support. You have to work much harder to make them hack proof, which you never can. But which means you also need lots of ways to ban people. And but like there's this huge pile of stuff that has nothing to do with like just like the core of the game that goes into multiplayer, and we just don't want to do any of it. And so anytime we start doing multiplayer stuff, as those questions start to come up, we're just like, you know what? Never mind. let's just not do this.
Yep.
So I'd say I would say that's probably one of our. I would call it a weak point. It's an opinion.
I would say multiplayer in a
do it.
competitive context. I agree, but I think once you remove the competitive aspect, then you get
that all matters less.
You can
even if it's co-op, if it's multiplayer only, right? Then like you need to have concurrent players at some level for the game to function, and then it's just very fragile.
Yeah, you want it as an add-on. But again, I think to me that framing is really, really important though, which is being bad at things is what it happens when you haven't done a thing before or you're still learning it. You know, so like being bad at a thing isn't a useful or interesting trait. And it's always a property of something you haven't done and gotten good at yet, right? So it's kind of just an irrelevant, kind of like it doesn't matter if there's something that we're bad at, because the reason we are is because we haven't done it.
Yeah, if we started working on it, we'd get better at it.
Yeah, we get.
I don't know if we'd get good, but we'd get better.
Who knows?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's an ongoing process.
If you're trying to pick a thing or predict a thing, if we were going to pick a game to make next, and we didn't want to have to try so hard for it to be successful, then we'd be like, all right, let's not do the thing we haven't done before.
Yeah, we follow a path that we're familiar with, exactly. Right?
Yeah. All right, so I think that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for the question. I would like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together, and thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate to support the podcast, and links to the podcast archives. And if you haven't yet, definitely go to Steam, the App Store, and Google Play, and pick up Crashlands 2 and play the crap out of it, because it's out.
And drop a review.
Ready to go. Yeah, and if you are playing it, drop a review. Ideally, a positive one. That would be how we would prefer it to go.
Yeah, so good.
Let's do that. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.